Hello and welcome to this Twitch session on building and securing a web application with Spring Boot. In this session, I will demonstrate how to develop and secure web applications with Spring Boot. However, before beginning with the application, let me introduce myself. My name is Somnath Musib and I am one of the managing authors. I am the author of the book named Spring Boot in Practice. This book is a recipe style Spring Boot book that demonstrates the practical use of Spring Boot. It also dives into various concepts of Spring Boot such as auto configuration, failure analyzers, actuator, Spring Boot starter configuration, Spring security, and various other things. This book is currently available through Manning Early Access Program or through MIP. You can use the following coupon code to obtain a 50% discount on this book. The discount code is shown here. Our book talks about various practical use of Spring Boot, and in this session, I'll demonstrate the use of Spring Boot by building and securing a Spring Boot based web application. So what are we building? We'll build a web application that lets you keep track of various conferences. This is a similar application that we have used in our book. In this application, we will use Spring Boot as the backend and Thymeleaf to build the application. So we'll use Thymeleaf along with HTML, CSS and Bootstrap to build the UI. Finally, we'll use Spring Security to enable a form-based login to secure the application. Let us begin with building a Spring Boot project first. So let's open Spring Initializr at start.spring.io. I'll be building a Maven project along with Java. So we have used the latest Spring Boot release 2.5.1 and group ID. I have selected com manning SPIP Twitch and we are using packaging as jar and Java version as Java 8. Let us now add the dependencies. So we'll use Spring Web dependency and JPA, H2 database, Thymeleaf. We'll also use Lombok. We'll use Spring Boot dev tools. We'll use validation. Okay, so these are fine for now. Let us generate the project. I have extracted this downloaded zip file and imported into Spring Tool Suite. So this is the project structure. So this is the generated project and we haven't added anything yet. Okay, and we have added these following dependencies: Spring Data JPA, Thymeleaf, Spring Boot Starter Validation, Wave, dev tools, H2 database, Lombok, and Spring Boot Starter Test. So let's now begin with creating the packages. So I will have model, service, repository, and controller packages. Let us now add the model, which is conference in this case. Okay. So as we are using Lombok, we'll add the data annotation here. And this is also a JPA entity, as well as we'll add no works constructor. Okay, now our conference will have following fields: an id, conference name, a conference date and time, conference location, conference speaker, and the status of the conference. So let's add this field. We have created the conference entity, so it has an id, name, the date time of the conference, the location, speaker is the location of the conference, and so on. So we have also used the validation, so the conference name should not be empty, so we have used that at not empty annotation. Okay, so we have also given that messages, so in case when in the UI, when we will apply the validations, so these messages will be displayed in case the user is not filling up the details. Let us now move on to create the conference repository interface. Okay, so let's annotate with repository, and this extends code repository, and the type here is conference, and id is long. So we'll not have any custom method, so leave it like this. Now let's define this conference service. So this service will contain a few of the methods which we'll be using in the controller. And the update conference, it takes the id of the conference and the updated object. Next we'll have the get conferences, next we'll get conference by id, so this returns an optional. Lastly, we'll have a method that deletes a pet specific conference. Okay, so let us now provide our default implementation of this interface. And this implements conference service. Okay, and this is going to be a service. Okay, let's implement all the methods. Okay, so this one, so first thing we're going to do is that auto where the conference repository here. Right, and on. Okay, so here let's save it, conference repository dot save of conference. Next update, so before we do the update we need to we need to get that conference from the DB, and then if it is present then we'll update. So let's get the conference first. Conference repository dot find by ID. This returns again an optional. Okay, so if it exists, if conversion dot is present, then we are going to update. So first conference okay, I have now gone ahead and created these methods. So what you're doing is that once we get the DB conference instance, we are setting the updated values and finally saving into the conference repository. And then I have also implemented that get conferences method, which actually use that conference repository to get all the conferences. Same thing is for the other two methods as well. So as this session is only for 30 minutes, I just try to save some time. Let us now go ahead and create our controller. So we'll have a conference controller. Let's add the conference controller class, and this is going to be a plain controller as we are using Thymeleaf here. Okay, and this requires the conference service. Okay, let's auto wire this. Okay, this dot conference service. Okay, and let's auto add it here. All right, let us now have our endpoints. So first one, we're going to add one for our index page. And this one is redirecting to the index endpoint. Okay, let us now add the next one, which will be the actually index endpoint. Okay, and this takes the model. So what we'll do here is we will actually get the list of conferences first. So let's use conference service dot get conferences, and let us use it. Okay, next we'll do So we'll use this conferences, and this list could be empty, so let's check if conference list dot is empty, then pass an empty list. Otherwise let's pass this conference list, okay, and return it to the index page. Okay, I'll add the other endpoints as well. Okay, I have also created the remaining endpoints, so let us go through those endpoints briefly. So I've added that add conference endpoint, so this will return to the add conference HTML page, and it will show that add conference HTML page. And once we submit the details in that conference HTML page, it will actually hit this endpoint. We'll have this conference binding result and the model. So if all the details are provided in the conference page, it's okay, it will continue and create the conference in the system. Otherwise it will return to the add conference page, and it will show the error messages which we have defined in the conference Pojo class. Okay, next we have defined the endpoint for update. So similarly, and this is a get endpoint, and for this particular ID it is going to return to the update conference page, where it will actually show the details which was already filled for the particular conference ID. And once the user has make some changes, it will actually come to this put mapping, and again it will perform the validation. If a validation is wrong, it will actually direct to the same update conference HTML page. Otherwise it will invoke the update conference service method in the conference service, and it will update the conference details. Eventually it will actually get all the conferences and return the user back to the index page. And lastly we have this delete endpoint, so that we can actually delete a particular conference details. So this in a nutshell, these are the endpoints which we'll be leveraging in our application. Next, what we have done is that in the application properties, I have added the following configurations. So this is these few configurations are for H2 database and all, and we have included the H2 console. Next, I have also included the following dependencies. So we are using bootstrap jQuery, so we have included these dependencies so that we can use those in our HTML pages. So I have also included 3 HTML pages. So as you can see from the controller, we have the index page, we have the add conference.html page, and update conference.html page for now. So in the index.html, so this is basically we have leveraged bootstrap features. So what basically does is that it actually checks if the conference list is empty. It just shows this message that you haven't added any conferences yet, and it gives the user an option to add new conference. If there are conferences available, it just shows all the conference details through a table. Then the add conference page, this is a similar type of page, only thing it actually gives the user HTML page where it can actually ask the conference details, and the user can actually save those details in the application. And the update conference.html page lets the user update the conference details. So we have in all these 3 pages we have actually used Thymeleaf. So syntax, for example, this th and all these, so these are from Thymeleaf. Okay, so yeah, that's all about the changes for now. Let us now start the application. Okay, so we haven't configured any specific port, so it's going to run in port 8080. Okay, so let's use here. Okay, so this is the home page or application index page. Now we don't have any courses and any conferences yet, so let's add a conference. Okay, let's say Spring Boot microservices, and let's put a date. Okay, location, let's give a location, and speaker, let's say John Doe, and add the conference. The application stores the conference details. Similarly, let's add one more conference details. It says Spring Boot with Docker. Location, let's select another location and a speaker. Okay, so as you can see, we can actually store our conferences in the application. Now let's use the edit option. So let's say this particular conference is cancelled, so we can actually cancel it. Okay, now it's updated. Also, you can delete a particular conference details from the application. Okay, so yeah, so the basic features of the application is working fine now. But okay, now let's move on to another aspect of the application, is securing the application. As you can see, this application is not secure, and there is no um, authentication is being done. So let's add Spring Security to implement form based login into the application. Okay, to enable security in the application, let us add Spring Security here. Okay, so we have added Spring Security, and yeah, so now let's start the application, see the changes. Okay, as you can see, Spring Security is actually started working, and it is providing us generated security password. So for instance, if I try to access the index page now, so we are redirected to login page. So note that this login page we haven't added by ourselves. This is provided by Spring Security. So let's try to access the application. So by default, Spring Security provides the user as user and the password as a generated password like this. So let's try to use these and log into the application. Okay, as you can see, now we are able to log into the application. Okay, now let's do a couple of changes. So what we will do is that we'll include a custom login page, because this login page provided by Spring Security is not in line with our application. And second thing what we'll do is that we'll also create a custom user. So we'll not use any backend to store the user. We'll use an in-memory user. So let's go ahead and do these changes. So first thing, we'll create a new package for the security. Okay, and let's provide a security configuration. So this is going to be a configurations class, and this class extends OS security configuration configure adapter class. So this class, once we extend this class, it provides the methods through which we can customize the security configuration in our application. So we are going to do that now. So first thing we will do is that we will include a password encoder. So password encoder actually encodes the password from a plain text string to a scrambled text which is a different one. So let's define a bean a password encoder, and let's use big crypt password encoder. So there are different password encoders available in Spring Security. So big crypt password encoder is one of them, so we'll use this one here. And now let's move on to create the user. So as I said, we will be using in memory authentication here. So auth dot in memory authentication, but you actually can have other authentication type, for example the JDBC authentication or LDAP authentication here. So we can actually configure those and use those. So you can refer to Spring Boot in practice book for these examples. We have provided dedicated techniques how to implement different authentication managers. Okay, so let's use the in memory one and provide it the password encoder. So here we'll use our password encoder, and next let's define the user. So here let's create the custom user dot builder dot username. Let's have the username as user, and password as, let's have it password, and roles let's have it as user, and build it. Yeah, so this creates the user. Okay, next we are going to configure our endpoints. So HTTP configuration here. So we are saying authorize all requests, and in the and matcher we are going to actually exclude the the login page. So definitely login page should be excluded, and also we're going to exclude the login error. We'll see these 2 endpoints shortly. And then so we are saying when these two, for these two let's permit all, and then any other request authenticated, and for these requests let's use form based login, and the login page should be this, and in case there is a login failure let's use failure URL to login error. Okay, so stop the application. Okay, so now let's add 2 more controllers. One is for login, one is for logout. And these are also regular controller, and let's have public string login. Okay, and this returns to login page. And we're going to have another endpoint for the login error. So we'll add an attribute. This is like login error to set to true. Okay, so in case of a login, it will actually now use this login.html page, and in case of any login error, so what we do, we redirect the user to the login page, but we set this attribute login error as true, so that we can use this attribute in our HTML login page and display a message to the user that there is something wrong with the login. Okay, now let's add the logout controller. Again, this is also a regular controller, and let's have this logout endpoint. So here it will take HTTP sublet request. Okay, and what we're going to do is that first we're going to get that authentication. So let's get it from the security context folder, and if it is not null, okay, and let's redirect the user to the login page. And lastly, add this as the get mapping. Okay, so we have included all the things. Now let's start the application. Okay, now notice one change here is that the default generated password is not there anymore. This is because we have configured our own in-memory authentication, and we have configured one user. So Spring Boot is not providing us the default user and the password. Okay, let's check the application. Okay, okay, we have started the application, and once we start accessing the index page, we are redirecting to something like this. Okay, now this is happening because now I know that HTML, CSS, JS and everything else are actually getting blocked because we have implemented the security, and the security configuration is blocking everything, right? So we need to ensure our web resources are accessible. So let's include the web configuration. Here we will include, first is that web jars, and then we will include we are using CSS, and the images. Let us now restart the application. Okay, as you can see now, it is now able to see the login page. So let's try to access the application with the user and password. Okay, it's not letting us in. Okay, so here is the problem. We are using a password encoder to encode the password, and we're supplying a plain text. So we also have to encode the password. Okay, let's again restart the application. Okay, let's try to log in. Okay, now we are able to log into the application, and if we create a new conference, okay, so we're able to create the conference. Now we have also enabled this logout button. So these we have done the changes in the corresponding pages. We have included the logout button and in all the pages. So you're seeing the logout option in all the pages. If we click logout, the application logs us out. Yeah, so in this session we have seen how to create our application with Spring Boot and Thymeleaf, and eventually secure it with Spring Security. So thank you for joining me in this session. Thank you.